Good Friday to you, everybody in Com 785. Welcome to week. Are you ready for this? Boom, 10. So that means we've got about a month and change left in the class. That's not bad. All right. Let's get things off on the right foot. Much better. The very last of this morning's coffee from, where's this cup from? From Hopper's Pub on Old Route 66, which runs Route 66 past, not far from where I live, but it also happens to run past one of my favorite places to go hiking and backpacking in my state. And Hopper's Pub, which is near one of the many military bases located here in my state, does an excellent job. Okay. Fort Leonard Wood, by the way, I mean, for those of you who know. Okay. So for today's video, it's going to be a little bit longer. So maybe you want to break it into two parts. The first bit, well, I'm going to talk to you about what we're doing this week. And then we will, of course, review questions from last week. And then the second part, I'm going to go over your midterm exam, which is all graded and up and in there. Overall, everybody did great. Okay, you did fine. But I'll go through each of the questions because you may see them again on a future exam. A wink. Okay, let's get started. All right, so last week we sort of asked some questions about social media. We're drilling down on social media, and this is important for you as communication professionals, not to get swept up in the, well, it's new, it must be better tendency that we humans have. Communication mediums, communication media, platforms, better, worse, they all come with some problem solving and some problem creating aspects. That's just how it works. And you can look back to the history of major changes in the platform as it's been rolled out, and find those. All right. And so just because something is new or something is accessible doesn't mean that it's the best thing for everything. So this week, we're going to take a look at that. You're going to be reading Cialdini again, the two books. And then starting next week, we're going to get into our unit on not-for-profit. So we'll start When Helping Hurts. All right, but you'll basically finish the Persuasion book. You're going to read through chapters 13. Chapters 13 and 14. And that will finish out the book. Okay. And then you're going to read In Science and Influence. And I know we haven't been following exactly along, but that's on purpose. Okay. All right. So that's this week. Let's take a look at what you did last week. Okay. From week 9, specifically questions. And, remember, and by the way, starting probably sometime this next week, I'll start grading these discussion things. I'm about 2 weeks behind. I usually grade around week 8. And I'm not going to evaluate all of your answers, line by line. All right. What I'm looking for in discussion is that you're engaging and you're participating and you're seriously wrestling with the text. If you get something wrong, you'll hear from me in the video, but I'm not going to ding you point-wise for that. Okay, let's take a look at week 9. Question number 1. In Persuasion, Cialdini writes, relationships not only intensify willingness to help, but also cause it. You understand that? Okay. So relationships intensify willingness to help. It ramps it up, but it is the originator of that thing. When we allow present-day forces of separation to take a shared sense of human connection out of our exchange, the relationship gets removed, and therefore the willingness to help goes down. All right. What does this mean? If what Cialdini says is true, can social media be the right tool to build needed human connections? Let's see, Benjamin. I think what he means is that one of the defining features of relationship is human connection that fuels our desire to help each other. Social transaction of helping is fundamental to relationships. True. Without it, we are simply multiple humans occupying the same space, competing for the same resources. Regarding whether social media is a good tool to build needed human connections, I think it definitely can be if social media functions as an entree to other vectors for engagement. Okay, that's fair enough. In other words, so long as it doesn't replace everything. In case you say, for example, through social media, I developed meaningful human connections with female musician refugees desperately trying to flee Afghanistan before the Taliban took over a few years ago. What began as a very meaningful community connection via social media grew into a deeper one. We had further video chats or conversations regarding our plans for their escape. Okay. So there was mediation, but there was still some connection. Okay, fair enough. I believe, Kai, let's take a look at you. I believe social media can play a part in building necessary human conditions. It can help individuals stay connected by sharing pictures and activities, making others feel included. Personally, I do not use social media much to connect with friends. I prefer calling, texting, sharing videos, images, or voice memos over the phone. Okay. And, presumably the reason for this is that you just you find it just doesn't connect you. All right. And I'm the same way. I teach social media, but I don't use a lot of it. Maybe I should, or, especially when it comes to disseminating and getting people to plug into my writings, but we'll take that up. Question number 2. In Persuasion, Cialdini writes, the following people are particularly willing to help genetically close relatives. So here's what I asked you to do. Find a link and explain an example of language that companies use in and out of social media that is designed to push the "we're related, right?" social button. Okay. In your considered opinion, is the use of such language a net negative or a net positive for a company? Now, I put this question up, I will admit, with a smeechy bit of bias. I absolutely recoil from this sort of language when I find it. Your family, you're one of us, your associates. It's like, yeah, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm family. Welcome to the Target family or whatever. Sorry, Cinda, I'm not trying to push your buttons. And it's like, look, I don't know, we're not family, okay? Because family doesn't charge me when I go in and take milk out of the refrigerator. You do, Target. So it really pushes my buttons, but it's pervasive, and I wanted to know what you think. Okay, Valerie, according to Cialdini, Coca-Cola Share a Coke campaign exemplifies this by replacing logo's bottle with a popular name, Coca-Cola. That's true. Like Mike or bro. I pulled this can out, said bro. It's like, yeah. Break it down. Position itself within the intimate social sphere, a symbolic family or friend circle by engaging customers directly, encourage them to share with someone. And this is a good example because I'm sure. Well, I shouldn't say I'm sure, but those who've seen this example. I mean, what? Do you? Oh, wait a minute! I can't drink this can. It says Jimmy on it. I gotta go find Jimmy. I mean, it could very well be, and I don't doubt that this is the actual motivation behind the campaign, that just you staring at the bloody can going, who's Jane, fixes the Coke product in your mind. And then the next time you're like, oh yeah, Coke. Okay. Another example is Southwest Airlines, which uses phrases like "Welcome to the Southwest family. We're all in this together." Yeah, this is another excellent example. If you've flown Southwest, which is just a notch up from Spirit, yeah, you are all in this together and crammed tightly. Sorry, and I've flown Southwest. I don't anymore, but I get what you mean. This wording appeals to the unity principle by highlighting family bond, okay, et cetera, et cetera. All right, now remember the last bit, because what I want you to do here is develop your evaluatory skills. Is this good? Is this a net positive or a net negative for a company? I'm looking for that. Mia, I think this type of language can be beneficial in this instance. You you're not referring to the above. You give your own example, but I'm just skipping a bit. Where the store is limited to serving only the state of Texas, companies' primary focus appear to be on corporate social responsibility, improving lives provided. However, it could backfire for companies that promote a family culture but do not enforce it. Rather than they use the concept to gain loyalty and credibility. Okay, and I would accept that as an answer if we were, in an exam, whether I agreed with it or not. That if you don't live up to the, we're all in this together, we're family, which from a corporate perspective, it's really hard to do. Okay, because unless you can police the interactions all the time with all your employees, with all your customers, which you can't, okay, then you're running the risk of someone who has a negative interaction with one of your employees for whatever reason, if it was the employee's fault or the customer's fault, and someone may be videoing it, and then they throw it up on a social media platform saying, oh yeah, this is how you treat family, eh? Then that becomes a net negative for the company. So be careful. Okay. Question number 3. In Influence, Cialdini writes, people prefer to say yes to individuals they know and like. Can the use of social media amplify these traits? And I asked you to link to a scholarly article concerning the same. Let's see, who have we not taken from here yet? Brianna, let's see what you're up to. Cialdini suggests people prefer to say yes. The article, people are more susceptible to agreeing with people they are accustomed to or can easily relate to. They often have influence within each other's and values each one's opinions. Social media is a perfect medium to amplify this trait, as social media allows brands to have a personality. That's true. I mean, even if that personality is like, what? Have you looked at some of the history behind some of the campaigns launched by the Wendy's, whoever owns Wendy's, I don't know if it's Wendy's Corporation or somebody else, in their tweets. It's like, it can have personalities and become a person individuals can link to, they can get to know the brand on a personal level, that's giving the brand an identity to partner with. And then you link to an article titled Meta-Analysis of the Effect of Brands Owned Social Media on Social Media Engagement Sales Conduct. Okay, excellent. Very good. Okay. All right, fair enough. Question number 9. In Influence, Cialdini notes the importance of physical attraction to overall liking. How can social media be used to increase someone's, like, say, a potential client, for example, physical attractiveness? What are the pros and cons of using social media and AI tools to manipulate someone's online appearance and images? And oh man, there are a lot of them. Okay, that is pros and cons. Okay, let's take a look at you. Cialdini discusses physical attraction. Social media can be used to enhance potential clients' physical attraction by altering their appearance specifically for brand purposes. Filters, AI image tools, Photoshop. The benefits for using social media include increased engagement, such as more likes, comments, shares. However, there are also drawbacks. One primary concern is the promotion of unrealistic beauty standards. That's an interesting place that you're going here. We're going to come back to that. I'm just highlighting it. These tools can set unattainable expectations for both individuals and their audiences. Overall, editing can also compromise authenticity, creating a disconnect between someone's online image and their real life appearance. Okay, I think where in the corporate world, that's primarily where we want to focus our attention in terms of being cautious. All right. Because brand. Now, I'm not taking issue with your answer here, but rather the function of a company, of a brand, that they are projecting an ideal to the client. I mean, who really experiences the level of joy depicted in advertisements for whatever, whether it's brushing your bloody teeth and it's like, yeah, really? I mean, how long has it been since you brushed your teeth? Or having a diet soda, or wearing an Apple Watch? I mean, take your pick. What companies do is they're not, the heart of advertising is not depicting the actual experience with the product, which in many instances is sort of like, yeah, okay. It's depicting an idealized experience with the product and a tremendously emphasized experience. You might, another word for that could be hyped experience with the product. Okay, because number one, they're trying to break through all the static, what everybody else is saying. And number two, they're trying to fix it in your mind as a means by which problem X, Y, and Z is solved. So you're not feeling down, drink this. Need to feel better about yourself, wear this, and so on and so forth. So I don't know. I shy away from the brands project an unrealistic beauty standard. That's their business. All right, they're that's not going to stop. Okay, good answer. All right, so this week we're going to take a look at some of the cautionary notes concerning social media. That is what it doesn't do, and maybe even some of the harm that could be done. Okay, and then next week we're going to shift gears and start getting into our not-for-profit section. Okay, that was what, 15 minutes. Oh, maybe I can keep this within a half an hour. All right, I'm going to review your midterm exam. You should all have access, to it, and with the questions, I've made comments for some of your answers, sometimes not. But just to give you a, what were you looking for and why was that? Okay. Here we go. Question number one, according to Wilson et al., which two voices of authority public trust most? It's technical and academic experts. And, I'm taking this, again, as I said before, from your discussions, which are in effect being taken from your texts. Okay. And so, stay focused on your discussions and stay focused on the text, and you're going to do fine on the final. Okay, that's number one. Question number two, Cialdini story of Jim and Jim, the fire alarm salesman. Why might some say that his sales methods were unethical? Okay, excuse me. Here's what I'm looking for when I ask you questions like this. I'm looking for not only your, very clear stated opinion. I'm looking for enough contextual material in your stated opinion that indicates to me that you read the text. So if you say something about him pretending to leave stuff in his car and then going out as a means by which to gain their trust, I gave you full points. If you leave that out, that's where you're going to lose points. Okay. Excuse me. My goodness. Question number three. Which of the following sequences is Pat Jackson's behavioral public relations model? That's awareness, latent readiness to behavior, triggering events, behavior. This is right out of your text. Question four. How would you describe R. Green's approach to communication or human relations? Here's what I was looking for: unethical, manipulative, Machiavellian. You can use as strong as language as you like. Although I discourage the use of profanity when it comes to any exam. I mean, come on, it's just a test. And as communicators, by the way, avoid profanity in general because it doesn't comport with how one conducts a Christian life, and it's boring. All right, find other ways to punctuate, to emphasize the emotions that sometimes go into a statement. That's fine. Okay. And if I was looking for, again, indicated that you read the review of his book, 48 Laws of Power, these sorts of things. So if you see, instead of 5, excuse me, you got like 3 or 4, and you didn't mention the book, and you didn't say, oh, look, this is just manipulative. That's where you're losing points. Okay. Question 5, which of the following best describes what Dr. Ewan, who appeared in the BBC documentary, meant in The Happiness Machine? It's not that the people in charge of people's desires are in charge. What he was after is in the early 20th century, individuals moved away from being active participants in government and were instead influenced by desires that were being strategically constructed and manipulated. And we are all the way into the deepest, darkest recesses of that rabbit hole. And yeah, as a communication scholar and a member of this society, it concerns me. It concerns me. It concerns me specifically how brands, that is, companies, have rewritten our folklore, and that phrase has a very specific connotation. It's German, folk meaning the people, and then lore meaning the stories that the people tell. And specifically, what stories do we tell ourselves about ourselves to make sense of ourselves to ourselves? Prior to really World War II, so really not very long, less than 100 years, those stories were reached way back. They were grounded in scripture, in allegorical works like Aesop, Brothers Grimm. They had a deep connection back to who we were, and when I say we, I'm speaking, as all of us as Westerners. Influences from all over the world, from other cultures, and systematically from really the interwar periods between World War I and World War II, and then after World War II, it's just like smash on the gas. Companies really drilled down into the science of changing the stories about who we were and what was important to who we are. And specifically, instead of, say, reflective exercises on behavior weighed against outcome, it was reflective exercises on outcome weighed against product and process. You want this, take this. You want to feel that way, wear this. You want to be a man, wear this. You want to be a woman, eat that. That's not good. That's not good. Okay. All right. Question number 6. True or false? Edward Bernays was deeply unsettled by the erosion of personal choice in the 20th century. False. A number of you answered this is true. He wasn't concerned at all. He didn't give a rip. In fact, he loved it. He was one of the puppet masters of seeing to it that personal choice was done away with. Okay. So read the text carefully when you get these, you get these questions in front of you. Question number 7. When people place too much confidence in their assumed knowledge and expertise, this is confidence bias. Okay. Question 8. True or false? Cialdini named his book Persuasion because he covers the science of how to predispose people to be persuaded before efforts to influence. That's true. He says that in the introduction. Question 9. In plain, simple English, explain what is meant by quantitative research. Quantitative research, this is from this person's exam, I won't say who it is I'm reading, is a method that presents study results in numerical and statistical numbers. Okay, yes. Now here's what I'm looking for. All right, let me pause on this a little bit. Let me explain this. This is very important to you as a communication scholar. Okay, quantitative or qualitative research are not things like this pencil and pen are things. Not just pen, the pen. Okay, and they are similar, but they are not alike. This doesn't have graphite in it. This does. This doesn't have ink in it. This does. This is made of wood. This is made of steel. This has an eraser on the end. This does not. These are distinct as items. Okay. Quantitative and qualitative research is not that. They are not distinct things. They are different ways of describing something. That's it. So quantitative or qualitative research is not a thing. It's a way to describe a thing. And by thing, what do we mean? A phenomenon, a behavior, a collection of objects, whatever. So for instance, you could give somebody a question on a survey that says, what color are your eyes? And you could structure the response that they were going to give you quantitatively. You could give them 4 choices. You could say brown, black, green, blue. Number 1, 2, 3, 4. And they would have to check one. Okay, even maybe though their eyes are hazel. All right, you're forcing them into one of these number choices. So you're expressing the phenomenon of eye color quantitatively. Or you could give them a question that goes, describe the color of your eyes. And they go, well, you know, my eyes are black, but not as black as my grandmother's. You know, my daughter's eyes are just very, very black. My mother's were. Not as dark as my grandmother's, but like my grandfather's or something. Okay, now you're expressing the phenomenon of eye color qualitatively. So what I want you to remember when you're looking at the difference between quantitative and qualitative and trying to make a decision about which one to use, they're just expressions, to different ways of expressing, and they have their pros and cons, you know, hence the debate between words and numbers, different ways of expressing a phenomenon. They're not things. Okay, all right. Quantitative research is best described as a method of research in which non-numerical data, qualitative, such as words, are collected to analyze a phenomenon. So here's a phenomenon, and you just, you know, you're collecting words instead of numbers to analyze it. Question number 11, true or false, psychological shoot refers to a phenomenon in which individuals descend into deep psychological depression. That's false. Yeah, you know, I have a sense of humor, so I'm not saying there's anything funny about deep psychological depression. Don't say that. That's not what I'm saying. But you know, I can sometimes be a bit of a trickster. So be careful as you read these questions. Question number 12. According to Cialdini, certain questions can increase the likelihood of desired outcome. This is true. Question 13. Briefly explain what P. Stark, professor of statistics, meant when he said type of data isn't the point at all. The way of thinking matters about it. Okay, a lot of you got this wrong. I want you to go back to pages 80 and 81. I'm not going to go into the explanation. And Wilson, and look at this chart right here. Okay, sorry, I got to get this printed. Okay, because that is right next to that. You find the quote. Okay, and specifically, he's talking about the intersection, where three things intersect, the intersection between subject matter, critical thinking, and applied statistics, and access to tools. Insight is the point in which they meet. Okay, go back and look at that if you didn't get that question right. Question 14. According to Cialdini, what are three central attractors used to persuade the audience? And that's sexual desire, threat of violence, unexpected change. It's not chocolate, coffee, alcohol, or red, blue, and yellow things. That's generally my inner Dr. Seuss for that. Question 15. According to the blog post you read, Insight Debate, who won the debate? Neither. That's what I was looking for. There wasn't a winner because they're just different means of expressing the same phenomenon, and one is not inherently better than the other. They each have their pros and cons. Question 16. According to Dr. Gardner, Dr. Nathanson revealed that statistics he and others used to change abortion were grossly exaggerated or simply false. True. So beware when someone starts throwing numbers and saying, well, you know, we know because blah, blah, blah. Say, okay, well, how'd you get those numbers? Show me that. Which of the following is not one of the tips from the pros given by Mark Wiener for his advice for dramatic data-centric communications? Forget about data, stick to coffee. is not one of the advice. Okay, and all the rest were. Question 18 in his book Persuasion, Cialdini writes, metaphor is the metador. What does this mean? Okay, here's what I was looking for. And this is what I want you to remember about this as communicators. You ready? Everybody thinks in story. Everybody needs story to have things. I'm looking for a book to have things make sense to them. Most don't know it, that they do it. Okay, but that's how the human brain works. And those stories are constructed or fueled or put together or lodged in their mind as metaphor, this representing that, and even simile, this symbolic of that. Okay, so if you use metaphor in your communication, this opens up every door or the big door or the door of doors for persuasion. That's what Cialdini meant by it. In fact, you know, the types of stories that people tell themselves and we tell each other to make sense of the world can really be shrunk down into 7. There are really 7 basic story themes, or plots, if you like. All right. The fact there's even there are books on this one. I've used this book extensively in my own writing and research, and it's a tremendous resource. Pack a lunch because it's kind of thick, but it's by Christopher Booker, and it's called The 7 Basic Plots: Why We Tell Stories. Okay, and he goes through and explains, how it is that every story that's told or told by people fits into these 7 categories, and then he gives you examples and explains, how the categories, or the plots, if you like, how they operate, what are their major features. And the plots are overcoming the monster, a rags to riches story, quest story, all right, a voyage and return, comedy, tragedy, rebirth. You pick a story, whether it's from scripture or a book, a movie, and you'll see that it fits into one of these 7. Okay. People make sense of the world by telling stories and by reading stories. Now not everybody's a good storyteller, but at the heart of those stories are metaphors. Come to understand this. And then here's the tricky part. Learn how to use metaphor in your storytelling. And this will make you a super, super effective communicator. If you don't use metaphor right, and if it's clumsy and it doesn't make sense, this confuses people. Simile, the same way. One of the most common disconnects in the use of metaphor and similes is mismatch. So let's say, you're going to use a simile. You're using a metaphor to describe life's journey, and it's like sailing a ship across the ocean. Okay, that's a simile. So now someone's thinking, okay, boat. Whether they've been on a boat or not, they've seen boats, so that's going to work. And then you mismatch it. Sailing a ship across the ocean. As you sail your ship of life across the ocean, and you encounter rough seas, watch out for that you don't fly off the corner as you make don't fly off the road as you make the turn. So now you're mixing, automobile travel with sea navigation, and that doesn't make sense. And that will stop your reader, and they'll go, huh, what? And now you've changed the conversation in the mind of the reader. You've changed it from the narrative driven by the metaphor or the simile getting to where you want to. Guess what you've changed it to? What the bleep bleep is this person talking about? I don't understand. Don't change the conversation. Okay, question 19. According to Cialdini, the rule of reciprocity suggests individuals are inclined to reciprocate favors or presents which can enhance compliance. Question 20. True or false? According to Cialdini, rule of authority suggests that individuals are inclined to comply with those they see as authoritative or reliable. True. 21. According to Cialdini, rule of scarcity suggests that restricted availability enhances appeal, which influences choice. According to Cialdini, rule of liking suggests that individuals are more readily swayed by someone they like or identify with. Briefly explain what Cialdini means by fixed actions patterns of behavior. Okay, so I was looking for something here in fixed actions patterns of behavior, that these are pre-programmed responses to certain stimuli that individuals have, okay? That they exhibit to the same behaviors in the same manner over and over. Now, it may not be exactly the same, hence the word pattern, okay? Not literal steps and actions. Figure out what the fixed actions of pattern of behavior are for a particular input. And then start, what I do this when I working as a photographer, I work backwards. I go, what kind of reaction, what kind of emotion do I want somebody to feel? That's the end point of their fixed pattern behavior. What kind of emotion do I want them to feel? And then I go backwards. Well, what do I know? And this is where you study your craft as a communicator. What do I know about the use of line, frame, subject, color, or black and white that will trigger that emotion? So I design the photograph with the endpoint in mind, but I am aware of the fixed action pattern of behavior. It's that sequence. Okay, that's what you want to be up to. 24. True or false? According to Dr. Gardner, the character of J. Alfred Prufrock can be seen as an exemplary model for Christian life well lived. False. Prufrock is what you don't do with your life. If you haven't, read that poem again. It's well worth your time. 25. According to Dr. Gardner, what are some of the benefits and drawbacks of the mind's tendency to use sign symbols to create categories of meaning? Okay, a lot of you got this wrong. Okay, because what I was looking for is yeah, I gave you the specifics on the board. Okay, the benefits are saving mental energy, snap judgment, projected assumptions about reality. But the point of that is that the benefits are also the drawbacks, because when you save mental energy, you're not thinking deeply about topics, and sometimes you need to. When you make snap judgments, if you're making the wrong one, then you tend to fix pattern, action, or behavior. You get stuck in that. And then when you project assumptions about reality, well, what if you're not right? Now, I don't know if it's Mark Twain, so this could be apocryphal, but the following statement has been attributed to Mark Twain. Okay, and it emphasizes this last point about projections and assumptions of reality, and that is, it's not what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you think you know but are wrong about. It's those things that you think are certain but you are wrong about. That's what gets you in trouble. So I was looking for something in which you recognize that the benefits are the drawbacks. Now, what is this? Why is this relevant? That's the human beastie, folks. Be aware. All right. Do not assume that everybody is all bad or all good, and that B, in tapping into fixed actions of behavior, that it doesn't come with risks. And the risks come from the very same place from whence comes the ability to get potential benefit. That is how the brain works. Okay, keep that in mind. Okay. 26. Gardner noted that within the study of semiotics, signs are grouped into 3 general categories: icon, index, symbols. Which is the most highly abstract contextual? It's symbol. All right, and symbols like letters, these are really contextual, abstract. I mean, okay, let's just do it like this. Okay. So how a letter association and kids, when you're teaching them the alphabet, A is for apple. I don't happen to have any apples at my desk, so I'm going to use this. So what if I said that I was for inhaler? Now, there is nothing inherent in this shape that you would associate with this. I mean, maybe that there's a curve and a bend at the bottom, but there's no inherent association between the two. So it is really, it's tremendously abstract. On the other hand, let's say that you happen to be walking along, through a forest. Maybe it was a birthday and you were giving yourself a present. Maybe you wouldn't give yourself a present as a walk through a forest. Okay, but let's just pretend. All right, and you happen to come along and you saw a symbol that looked something like, oops, let's put it like this, that looked like this. Okay, see that? See this and this? Okay, there's an association between this and this. Okay, that's why letters, as they fit into this category of symbol, are extremely abstract and the most difficult ones to get our heads around. 27. According to Dr. Gardner, to grow as a writer and communicator, you have to orient yourself, driving at answers such as, why am I here and who will I be? This is true. If you do not do that, I mean, you're going to flap around. I'm not criticizing anybody's methodology. I'm giving you the advantage, the perspective of, Lord, sorry, God. Every time I say this, I go through this in my head. I just go, sort of cringe. I'm giving you the perspective of like, when did I really start writing? Okay. 40, 44, 45 years. All right. As a communicator and a writer. Question 28. Briefly explain what Dr. Gardner mentioned. He says, when working as a researcher, duty to act as investigator, not advocator. Most of you got this right. Just investigate, ask open-end questions, answer them. If they answer in the positive, great. If they answer in the negative, great. Use the answers that you get for your advocacy. Figure out what really works and what doesn't work. Stay away from agenda-driven solutions. Okay, flip that script, man. Make the agenda subservient to the solutions, not the solutions subservient to the agenda. You will be much more effective in what you're trying to get done. Question 29. According to Dr. Gardner, the phrase einmal ist keinmal is a German dictum, which means to do something once is as good as never doing it. Now, I have to tell you, again, a little Easter egg here. One thing is as good as another. I just made that up. These other two, when I started taking German, I had a very stern German teacher. He'd grown up in Pennsylvania in a German area. He spoke German most of his life. He was older. He had been in the U.S. Army. They had put him in intelligence and sent him to Germany. He got in after the war was finished. And his job was to root out Nazis who were trying to blend into the general populace. And he hated the Nazis. He would say, with great repetition and with mockery, ja, es was 1,000 Jahre Reich. It barely lasted 6 years. It's like Herr Müller. And he would write these sentences on the board. He would walk in. He was very serious. He wore this bow tie. And he would walk in and he wouldn't say anything. Would be sitting there. He would walk in, pick up a piece of chalk, put one hand behind his back, and start writing these sentences on the board. And he would, for the first couple of days, he'd say, "Yeah, now translate these," or he would just come in and say, "Yeah, you know what to do." So we'd start writing all of them down, start translating them. It's called live translation, where you just off the top of your head. And he would write these sentences on the board, and I would work out a translation. I'm like, no. It cannot be that someone just wrote on the board for a whole class to translate that what they wrote is the smaller monkeys are best suited for the experiments. Well, where is that coming from in this guy's head? But those two other options, those who will not learn from history are doomed to repeat it, and then the smaller monkeys were actual sentences that he wrote on the board. Just like, and I thought it was me. Sometimes it's not you, it's them. Okay. In the story, the present, Dr. Gardner reconsiders preconceived notions of time when he encountered which animal? It was a black bear, not a monkey, not a donkey. These were in the stories, and not a platypus. I just put that in there. Who doesn't love a platypus? Cialdini notes 31 that the rule of reciprocity applies primarily to narrow demographic, notably women. This is false. Now, I think in one of my videos, I said, it applies mostly to women. No, I misspoke. I was thinking about something else. No, reciprocity is something that is common among all folks. Okay, that's false. And I know, Cinda, you'd asked me about that, and you got it right. Question 32, which of the following best describes how the reaction, threat, rejection, then retreat technique works? Someone first asks for something large, say the price of an item, knowing full well they'll be declined. The same person asks for something smaller. Okay, so you could do this in your negotiations. Ask for a price, whether it's a salary or something that's higher than you're going to get. You say, I really can't do this for under, pick a number, 100,000. When you would settle, say, for 75. I go, ooh, can we meet you on that? Can we meet you at about, 80? You go, okay. 33, according to Cialdini, appearing consistent both to ourselves and others creates an aura of credibility, etc. This is true. So work on consistency within yourself. Work on a consistent routine. Okay, this will help you trust you. 34, briefly describe why Viktor Frankl stayed in Vienna with his mother and father. Okay, so I was looking here for this. I want some indication that you read the bloody preface to the book. You should read the whole book. It is a phenomenal book. Okay, and especially as a Christian university. I was looking for a mention that he comes home. He tells you the story. He comes home and he's like, he's got this visa and he could go because he's an important professor. He comes home and there's this fragment of the synagogue from Vienna that was burnt to the ground in these riots. He's like, what's this? He asks his father. It has a little fragment of gold inlay of a letter. His father said, I got that from what was left of the synagogue. And that little fragment, that little inlay of the letter, it was the first word in the commandment, honor thy mother and father. So you could say he received a message from God, or he saw this and he was struck with how he had to take care of his parents, that this was his calling before his academic stuff. That's what I was looking for. Question 35, according to Dr. Gardner, writing is one of the most natural and unnatural activities. That is true. Question 36, the marketing firm Konya PR primarily use qualitative, et cetera, to boost the sale of Just Born's Peeps. The answer is false. It wasn't qualitative. It was quantitative. Question 37, data in the form of statistics and narratives process report can be called primary source data. False. Primary source data is what you gather. Okay, it's the raw data. Secondary is what someone has already processed. Okay, so I asked you, describe a secondary source. So I was looking for something like it's already gathered, it's already processed by researchers, it's already gone through somebody's filter. Okay, question 39, according to Wilson et al., loss aversion can be defined as a decision made to avoid pain of loss instead of decisions made that would produce pleasure or to maximize gain. Same language. That's true. Question 40, true or false? Dr. Gardner strongly suggests that we should be careful of the stories that we tell ourselves because they tend to come true. True. Okay. And this includes, the stories that you tell those that you're communicating with personally or professionally. Be careful of what flies out of your mouth, off your pen or your keyboard. It's interesting, especially when you get into the professional world, companies, PR companies, comm directors, people assume that you know what you're doing and they know what you're talking about. And if you make a gaffe, if you goof, they'll assume you did it for some reason on purpose. And they tend not to assume unless it's, unless you just can't find your way off the stage or something. Oh yeah, that's him. Okay. And so that's the story that you're telling them, that you know what you're doing. And then they're going to go, well, why would they do this? And they're assuming that you must have a reason, and maybe you just made a mistake. So be careful of the stories that you tell yourself, and be careful, because they start in here, the stories that you tell others in your relationships, personal and professional. Okay. All right, everybody. 48 minutes. Yow. I hope you took a break. All right. Okay. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be out of the office. I will, post material and stuff on Canvas. I will be back in the commander's chair on August the 4th. Okay. So I'll have access to the internet most of next week. But the week after that, I'm going into a deep dive to work on my mother's house, and I stay with her, and I just, I'm out, man. Okay. So if you have any questions, get them to me. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Good job on the exam. Okay. And keep on keeping on. We're getting close to the end. Okay. I think about you and many of you individually now that we had the chance to meet, and I pray for you. And I will see you on Canvas. Bye-bye.